Thank you. So, older workers are the fastest growing share of the workforce. And one big reason for that is because it's gotten a whole lot harder for Americans to retire because high costs and low wages squeeze families. So here we are in the richest country in the world where I think workers ought to be able to work for fair pay and fair conditions and then retire with security. But many workers post-retirement are back in the workforce in part-time jobs. And one of the things they encounter there are what are called just-in-time scheduling practices. This is when employers give workers their schedules at the very last minute, sometimes as little as a day or two before their schedule shift. And while that might be just in time working for an AI algorithm, looking at the latest foot traffic, for example, in a grocery store, it is great for the algorithm, but not so great for the workers. So do you go to the doctor's appointment, or do you skip the shift and not get paid? Will you be able to pay your electric bill if your shift this week gets canceled? Older workers are more likely to be part-time, where just-in-time scheduling practices are far more common. So, Ms. Lamont, you're the Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer at AARP. Why are last-minute schedule changes particularly difficult for older workers?
Well, Senator, I think last-minute schedule changes are difficult for all workers. And I will say, I think you all know AARP has offices in every state. So I oversee a staff of 700 multi-generational workers. And my experience has been on all issues related to flexibility. It is just as much a concern of younger workers as it is older workers. I would say older workers may be juggling a few more caregiving duties and medical appointments. Mothers and fathers in their 40s and 50s are the sandwich generation dealing with children and those responsibilities along with caregiving. And our younger staff, I find, are the busiest because many of them are in school at night and juggling lots of other duties. So I think flexibility is something that doesn't just affect older workers, but all workers. Mm-hmm. You've raised something important, though, which is when we've talked a lot about workforce flexibility, it's been framed in terms of working at home or working in the office. And really what I find most of the discussion to be about is not so much that, but work hours. Can it be flexible so maybe I can drop my kids off at school in the morning and then work a little later? Can I adjust my hours in some other ways? And I think employers that are committed to multi-generational workforces are beginning to adapt and understand how important flexibility is. I think we all benefit from knowing our schedule in advance. I was joking with the team that I think we all appreciated being invited last week to testify rather than last night. And those are the kinds of things I think we can all benefit from.
Yeah. And can you just say a word about what happens to workers when last-minute work schedule changes conflict with their obligations outside work? I've kind of given my own summary, but you're the expert. You're running a staff of 700.
Well, when schedules change, one of two things happen. You will either have to arrange something in your personal life, often with some cost, or you miss something at work. And that, depending on your employer, can be a matter for discussion or a matter for serious confrontation. Mm-hmm. And I think it really depends. And it's incumbent on all of us, I think, to talk much more about what are the labor force needs. We are going to have to engage more older workers in jobs across this country. And what does that mean? And what does that mean also for our multi-generational workforces?
So it seems to me that we need some guidance around this. As you say, some employers are changing, but many are not.
Sure.
And so the question becomes, what is the right way? What should be the workplace rules? I've got a bill called Schedules That Work, and it would give employees just a couple of rights. One is the right to request a schedule that works for them without getting fired for making the request. Mm-hmm. I know that seems like common sense, but for a lot of people, that's not happening for them in the workforce. And the second thing is to say, if schedules are going to be changed at the last minute, then there needs to be some compensation for the worker. You can't hold people, in effect, on call. That is, you're going to come in next Thursday, you agree you're coming in next Thursday, you will be there next Thursday, and then on Thursday morning you get a call that says, don't come in, and don't get paid for the day. If you held your Thursday open, then there needs to be some compensation in return for that. And I think your point is right, Ms. Lamont, that it would be helpful for workers of all ages, but it is particularly helpful for workers who are part-time workers, because they face this so much more than full-time workers do, and particularly helpful for workers who have obligations outside the workforce. So I'm going to continue to work on this. I'm going to encourage other members of the Aging Committee to take a look at it, just to try to get some guidelines in place that will be helpful for all of our workers, but I think will have a special benefit for our older workers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Warren, let me, just as a business person, let me just tell you the issue that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. So, because I agree with you. I mean, not, we all want to know our schedules, right? I mean, but if you think about it from the standpoint of an employer, here's what goes on. Let's say you take a restaurant. Everybody gets their reservations through Open Table. And you find that day that your reservations are down 50%, right? And so you say, well, how many people should I have come in? So you say, well, I don't need as many workers today. And so is it good for the worker? No, right? But if you tell the worker to come in, then the employer probably, it costs them money, right? So can they keep that restaurant open if they did have something? So I think in almost every industry, what my experience in the businesses I was in is everybody always joked, this would be a great job except for the customers. Mm-hmm. The customer dictates all this and how many people are going to show up that day. And in so many businesses, not all businesses, it's more stable, but there's a lot of them that the revenue that you'll get that day is completely dependent on who's going to show up. Sometimes you have a good idea, and sometimes you don't. My first business was a donut shop, and I can tell you my revenues were 100% tied to the weather. And so, but I think you got a legitimate point, because it's frustrating to somebody if they think they're going to get paid and think they're going to have not, and they save their time, and then they lose that income.
I would just say in response, because I appreciate the point you make, the question is not the customers. I get it. Customers can come or not come, and that's going to change how many workers are needed at any given time. The question is, who bears the burden of that risk? And the idea that the employer says, I want you to be available. I want you to block out your Thursday, no matter what. And don't take a class that meets on Thursday. Don't agree to take care of your grandchildren on Thursday. Pay the caregiver who's going to show up and watch your husband who can't be left alone. That the employee takes on all of that cost and risk, and the employer takes on none of it in many industries. And I think that's the part we're trying to figure out, is who is it should be responsible for that. And I think employees need a little more help on their side, and some rules that give some guidance around that.